Good morning, Sunday Assemblers. How are we doing today? I hope we are at least a little bit happy. It is so good to be back together again. We made it through 2020. Can you believe it's been 4 years since we did that song in Scarrett Bennett? So much has changed. Oh my goodness, it's so hard to comprehend. But congratulations, buckle up. You made it through 2020, where all of a sudden there's a pandemic where we had no idea that that was going to happen. And now we're in 2021, where not only are we still kind of dealing with that, but there is the hope of the vaccine. And there's this beautiful graphic that perfectly encapsulates that. So I'm going to have our tech team show that to you so you can enjoy and be like, yes, we have progress. There it is. Also, there's a poll going on. Please join us on Menti. The question is, after the vice president, who is next in line to become president? The Secretary of State, the Speaker of the House, or the Senate Majority Leader? Please make sure to post your votes. And here, after my little intro spiel, I'm going to reveal the poll and the right answer, which is most important. So, what is Sunday Assembly? If you've never been before, welcome. We're pretty cool. We're kind of like a family, even though we're virtual right now. We're still family. And Sunday Assembly is radically inclusive. Sunday Assembly is a secular congregation that celebrates life. Our motto is live better, help often, and wonder more. Our vision is a Sunday Assembly in every town, city, and village that wants one. Sunday Assembly has no doctrine and no set text. We make use of wisdom from all sources. Sunday Assembly has no deity. We don't do supernatural, but we won't tell you you're wrong if you do. Sunday Assembly is, I said it was radically inclusive. There it is again. Everyone is welcome, regardless of their beliefs. Sunday Assembly is independent, free from outside sponsorship or promotion. We have a community mission. We build purpose and provide encouragement so we may act to be a force for good. We won't tell you how to live, but we will try to help you do it as well as you can, because Sunday Assembly is a celebration of the one life we know we have. And I think that some of the things that have been going on in our political landscape and in our country are just bringing that home in a way that is unexpected. The things that have happened in the last week alone are just like, oh my goodness, how on earth are we ever going to be able to process all of this information and deal with the fallout of 4 years of a president who has basically used the position for his own benefit? How are we going to deal with all of these people who have come behind to support him and his agendas? And that's going to be some things that we have to work through, and hopefully some of the things that our speaker says today will help us. But first, I'm going to reveal our poll. So if we could see what people have voted for. And you know what? We have some very smart people in the House, because the majority answer, the Speaker of the House, is correct. So for those of you who didn't know, yeah, there's a succession order of if the president isn't able to do their job, if they die in office, something like that. And then the vice president, there's this whole list. I think they have like 150 different options for, they want to make sure that the government can still move forward even if people pass away. So that's a good thing that they have that. So. All right, so we're going to move on from our poll. For those of you who didn't know the right answer, well, it gives you a chance to practice your Google foo and look it up for next time. But next, we're going to go on to our reading. We always have a reading from a poem or a text that is really meaningful and really impactful to our subject for today. And I can't think of a better poem and better people to read it. Right now we have Lori and Landry Butler reading Let America Be America Again by Langston Hughes.
Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free.
America never was America to me.
Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one
It
above.
never was America to me.
Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe.
There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free.
Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars?
I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I'm the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I'm the worker, sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean. Hungry yet today, despite the dream. Beaten yet today, O pioneers. I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker, bartered through the years.
Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned. That's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea. And torn from black America's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today.
Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me. Who made America? Whose blood and sweat, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America.
Oh, yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be.
Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains and endless plains, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
Wow. So powerful. Thank you so much, Lori and Landry. That was amazing. just so timely and so much feeling in that that I think we can all agree with, that we want America to be this bastion, this beacon of inspiration and hope for the whole world. And so we need to work towards that. And hopefully some of the things that our speaker is going to talk about will help us with that. Journalist Katherine Stewart is an investigative reporter and author who has covered religious liberty, politics, policy, and controversies over the separation of church and state for over a decade. Her latest book, The Power Worshippers, which I love the double meaning, Inside the Dangerous Rise of Religious Nationalism, is a rare look inside the machinery of the movement that brought Donald Trump to power, taking readers inside key gatherings and strategy meetings and introducing them to the movement's most intriguing personalities. So please welcome Katherine Stewart.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to join Sunday Assembly. Thanks to the organizers and everyone who made this happen. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then I'd really love to hear from you. But before I get started, let's take a moment to acknowledge one another for making time for today's assembly. It's been a weird and difficult time on multiple levels, and I hope all of you and your loved ones are safe. We care about one another, we care about our democracy, and that's why we've joined together today to talk about these issues. It has been quite the week. We've seen things in our nation's capital that we never thought we'd see in our lifetimes. But in the midst of the current crisis, I also want to acknowledge the moments of hope and uplift that many of us have also experienced these past few weeks. For many of us who are committed to democratic principles, equality, true religious freedom, and the separation of church and state, the presidential election and the events in Georgia have been a big step in the right direction. We should not be discouraged by what we fear, but encouraged by what we hope will be possible. Now, I'm aware that not everyone joining in today's discussion is going to be happy with the election outcomes. There are no doubt some independents and Republicans joining the conversation, and that's great. This is a nonpartisan platform, and everyone is welcome. But I think most of us here can recognize that a theocratic agenda and the politicians that push it are at odds with our most democratic, cherished democratic principles like equality and freedom of thought and expression in an irreducibly pluralistic nation. The current assault on our capital and the efforts to spread lies in order to overturn an election are perhaps the most dangerous markers in recent history. The motivations of the demagogues pushing the stolen election narratives run deeper, though, than the obvious tactical advantages that they might seek. Although many of the foot soldiers involved in the assault on the Capitol appear to have been men and some women, white men and some women aligned with white supremacist movements, it would be a mistake to overlook the powerful role of the rhetoric of religious nationalism in their ranks. At a Washington, D.C. rally on the eve of the Electoral College certification, right-wing pastor John Locke said that God is raising up an army of patriots. Another pastor who was invited to speak, Brian Gibson, said, "The Church of the Lord Jesus Christ started America." That's what he said. And he added, "We are going to take our nation back," and prominently displayed Confederate flags dotted the crowd alongside signs with religious Christian imagery, signs reminding us that Jesus saves, and what they call a Christian flag. We haven't seen this alliance of white supremacy and religious nationalism so obvious in our nation's capital in such obvious ways in quite some time. So conventional wisdom has suggested that any damage to our democracy that religious nationalism imposes is just an unintended side effect of efforts by ambitious right-wing politicians who are trying to appease Trump and appeal to his base of voters who are sort of ultra-loyalists. But now we're seeing the damage playing out right in front of our eyes. And the sad fact is that a substantial number of far right-wing elements of the Republican Party, unfortunately, stopped believing in democracy some time ago. This has been obvious from their long-standing efforts at voter suppression and disenfranchisement. Many people underestimate the Christian nationalist movement's political power, as well as the anti-democratic nature of its aims. And the reason has to do with a lot of the ways in which it is often mischaracterized. A lot of people think the movement is all about the so-called culture wars. They think that its leaders are simply aiming to end abortion or same-sex marriage or things like that. They're not. Their aims are far more ambitious. Those culture war issues are just tools that the leaders of the movement have framed over time, and they use those issues almost like shiny baubles to get people to vote a certain way and help their allied politicians amass political power. I was at an anti-abortion conference recently on Zoom, and as one of the speakers put it, we need to turn people into single-issue voters. So they know very well that if you can persuade a group of people to vote on a single issue or on maybe 2 or 3 issues, you can control their vote. You can get them to vote for the hyper-conservative politicians who promote far-right or libertarian economic policies, for instance, which those anti-abortion voters may not agree with. But they'll overlook the far-right economic policies because they really just are supporting this other culture war issue. These politicians might support foreign policy goals that the rank and file don't agree with, or they might support other types of domestic policies, such as environmental policies, that these voters wouldn't agree with either. So some people think the Christian nationalist movement is about symbolic issues, like whether we have a cross on a public land here, or if somebody says a prayer in a public meeting over there. They think that these are the driving concerns. And they're led to believe that the political ramifications of these symbolic issues are just a consequence of these concerns. They think that, you know, if a religious right can say a prayer before, a member of the religious right can say a prayer before a public meeting, that they'll be satisfied. But this is fundamentally false. This is a movement that exploits religion for political purposes and exploits those so-called culture wars for political gains. So when one issue is resolved, others will take its place to serve the same purpose, which is to unite and divide people for political power. Some folks portray the Christian nationalist movement as a grassroots reaction to aspects of modern life, but the movement is organized from the top down. It's unified by a certain ideology and a certain network. So here's the most important thing to understand about this ideology and network. It is deeply undemocratic. It does not support equality. They do not believe in the idea of a representative or pluralistic democracy. And we saw that tragically and explicitly in our nation's capital this past week. They're committed implicitly or explicitly to the idea that a so-called right-thinking group of the population, which is not a majority of the population, it's a smaller group, a minority of the population, but they think that they have a right to rule over everyone else. So when presented with the facts that say a majority of voters support a political candidate that they don't like, they feel entitled to discount those voices, disenfranchise those votes, and try to steal an election. So let's talk about how the Christian nationalist movement works. There's no one single organization behind it, but there are dozens of organizations at the national level that are working to unite and organize the many hundreds of thousands of thousands of organizations advancing the cause at the lower level, the state level, even the community level. The leadership cadre and their supporters and allies have spent many hundreds of millions of dollars over decades building legal advocacy organizations, activist groups, think tanks, sophisticated data initiatives messaging platforms, networking organizations, and legislative initiatives that operate behind the scenes. So let's consider where some of the most militant and coordinated support for this post-election assault on the American constitutional system has come from. Just give you one example. There's this group called the Conservative Action Project. It's associated with the Council for National Policy, which serves as a networking organization for America's religious and economic right wing. Betsy DeVos, former education secretary who just resigned, I'm sure many of you are familiar with her. Her husband formerly served as executive director of the Council for National Policy. And he said it brings together the doers and the donors of the Christian right. So the CNP is this, networking point for the religious right, one of them. So it's this the Conservative Action Project is an activist group associated with that Council for National Policy. And they made their position clear in a statement issued only a week before the insurrection at the Capitol, the failed insurrection. They issued a memo calling for members of the Senate to contest the electoral votes from Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and other states that were the focus of Republicans' baseless allegation. So here's an interesting detail about that memo. Among the signatories was Cleta Mitchell. She's the attorney who advised the president during his phone call with Georgia's Secretary of State, where Trump demanded, something like, just find me 11,000 votes. Remember what he said? Just that's all I need, 11,000 votes. So co-signatories to this disinformation exercise included a number of powerful religious right leaders like Bob McEwen, who's a very closely executive director of the Council for National Policy, or Tony Perkins, who's the president of the Family Research Council, one of the leading policy groups of the religious right, and more than a dozen others. In the aftermath of the failed insurrection that we witnessed this past week, a number of Christian nationalist readers issued statements condemning the violence, but they made sure to condemn violence on both sides. All violence is wrong, and this is really terrible, but all sides do it. Well, I mean, this is really kind of passing the buck. It was a far right radical group that stormed the Capitol, and few of these leaders, if any, appear willing to acknowledge the roles that they have played over time in perpetuating the fraudulent allegations of a stolen election that were at the root of the insurrection. So let's take a step back from the events this week. When I was researching and writing my book, The Power Worshippers, in order to understand how the movement works, I attended a number of religious rights strategy meetings and gatherings and conferences. I also attended churches where movement leaders were working to turn their congregations into partisan political cells. Just before the last midterm elections, I attended a Watchmen on the Wall event, which is Watchmen on the Wall is a networking organization of pastors, right-wing pastors. That's an initiative founded by the Family Research Council, which I mentioned earlier. It's one of the leading policy groups of the religious right. But Watchmen on the Wall, one of their organizations, is just for pastors. So I attended one of their events at a church in rural North Carolina with dozens of evangelical pastors from the area. The event was aimed at teaching them how to communicate to their congregations the key issues that supposedly matter and the biblically correct way to vote on them, the supposedly biblically correct way to vote on them. So the moment I walked into the church, I was with a friend who's actually more, he's a pastor also, but more on the sort of politically progressive side. We could tell immediately this was not a politically neutral affair. Several speakers suggested the Democratic Party is aligned with the so-called forces of darkness, and that this was something that these pastors had a biblical duty to fight against. The pastors were instructed to form what they called culture impact teams. The idea is for them to create teams of congregants in their congregations that will, as they describe it, advance kingdom values in the public arena. They were told to figure out which pastors which members of their congregations are politically active, well connected with other members, and then motivated to get them to get out and vote according to their so-called biblical values. Then they gave them these tools to do that, like this here, which is called a Culture Impact Team Manual. It's got about 150 or 200 pages of tab material instructing these pastors how to do this. So they're not just telling people to get out and get their congregants to vote. They're actually giving them very detailed materials, very specific materials and resources and messaging tools in order to do it. A fundamental motivation behind these types of tools is to get around the IRS guidelines that say pastors can't endorse candidates from the pulpit. This is a justification for their very substantial, tax exemptions and benefits and things like that. But nothing stops congregants from doing their own church-based political activism if it's all about the culture. Several years ago, I interviewed a pastor about these types of initiatives, and he called it a God-given loophole. He said these types of tools and messaging materials thread a separation of church and state loophole. So let me tell you something else about the messaging of the movement leaders. When they're talking to the congregants or talking to the pastors about talking to the congregants, it's all abortion all the time. But when you look at the political messages in more detail, and especially the messages they're sending to one another and to the elites in power, it's not just about abortion. A lot of it is about money. It's about how the Bible supposedly favors low taxes or no taxes for the rich, how the Bible favors minimal government regulation or no government regulation for business, about how the Bible is against environmental regulations and against the social safety net, unless the social safety net is managed by the church, which is receiving public money for the purpose. So groups like Watchmen on the Wall are not just religious groups intent on promoting these so-called biblical values. They're also manipulating people to vote, to persuade them to vote in a particular direction. When you question these leaders, a lot of times they'll say, hey, we're just arguing for our biblical values. But we know, and I think most of them know, that they are exploiting religion for political purposes. So here's something important. When political religion turns against democracy, it also starts asking for money, your money, with no strings attached. It starts to confuse its democratic rights with an exemption from democratic law. And it confuses the freedom to exercise religion, which we all have and should celebrate, with an entitlement to public funding and endorsement. Religious nationalism talks a good game about individual responsibility, but it sets all that aside when it comes to feeding at the government trough. Here's another really important thing I want to get across. So-called religious freedom, you're starting to hear more and more calls for religious freedom. This is a concept as conceived by the right, the way they conceive it. It's going to be used increasingly as a wedge to divide the supposedly good and holy from the supposedly unholy. It will start to fulfill the same purpose that abortion has fulfilled within the Christian nationalist movement. True religious freedom, of course, is one of our most cherished principles. It includes the freedom of worship, conscience, and belief. It also includes the freedom to not participate in any religion if you don't want to, freedom from compulsory worship. And it also includes the freedom from having to fund other people's religious organizations. And yet, Christian nationalists have used the phrase religious freedom to mean its opposite. What they really mean, the way they're using it, or I should say distorting it, is the right of people with certain types of religious beliefs to discriminate against others of whom they disapprove. It's also, for them, a means of singling out specific non-conservative groups in society, LGBT Americans and humanists, among others, as groups designated by public authority as being officially worthy of contempt. So here we are in 2021. Let's hope we have a new lease on democracy. But there are some underlying structural issues that remain. Among the most important is the fact that the movement has succeeded in developing and promoting a far right-wing propaganda sphere. It's a sort of hermetic information sphere. Trump and his allies in the movement continue to make every effort to interrupt the democratic functioning of the American Republic through some of these dangerous echo chambers. And what we're seeing unfold in the present time, unfortunately, is that keeping a large part of the population in a state of illusion, or divorcing people from the facts, is a really bad idea if you want a stable democracy. So I've spoken long enough. I want to wrap up, and I'd like to hear from you. But I want to close with a final and more tactical point. One of the tricky things about criticizing Christian nationalism is that the criticism is easily confused with criticism of the Christian faith. It isn't. And of course, I hope I've made that clear. When I criticize the movement, I'm critiquing a political ideology that happens to make a very cramped and slanted use of religion for political purposes. But that is a hard point to convey in the soundbite world that we all live in today. And Christian nationalists do their best to misunderstand the criticism because it plays directly into their, persecution complex. So what's the answer? There are no easy answers. There's no one easy fix. No magic bullet, right? But one thing we have seen is that the nuts and bolts of political organizing and persuading people to show up to vote and educating people about the facts really does work. I'm going to paraphrase something that Stacey Abrams said. She said, "I'm not optimistic or pessimistic, I'm determined." So here's another thing we can all do. We must reclaim the philosophical high ground on the issue of religious freedom. Religious nationalists aren't the ones fighting for religious freedom. You are. Everything you do can and should be framed as part of the pursuit of genuine religious freedom. We should all be alarmed by the rise of religious nationalism and what it means for our country's future, but we shouldn't be feeling despair. We in America have faced terrible crises and challenges in the past, and often great periods of progress emerge from them. Religious nationalists are using the tools of democratic political culture to end democracy. I continue to believe those same resources can be used to restore it. Thank you so much for listening, and I really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Katherine. We are going to enter into some question and answer session. We already have one question from Zoom. Do you have any tips or ideas when speaking with friends and family on this topic as far as how to tell them, how to communicate that concern that we have about religion being appropriated for the right to use?
That's a great question, and thank you for that. I think we all, we all have members of our friend and family circle, or many of us do, or most of us do, who take different stance on some of these issues. And I think that it's, you don't always expect, it's a challenging one, right? You don't always expect to change people's minds, but you can definitely state your values proudly, make sure to couch your beliefs in your efforts in the language of religious freedom, and explain where you anchor your sort of moral core. I think sometimes it helps to find issues that everyone agrees upon, like, issues of concern for, whether it's about education or healthcare, concern for the poor, concern about lack of social safety net. I think one of the most dangerous features of our current environment is that right, sort of far right propaganda sphere that has separated people from the facts. And it never hurts to gently try to, burst that bubble and present positive proof in language that people can understand.
Speaking of like bursting the bubble. You were talking about them painting sort of a reality for the religious right, that they said, okay, there's this utopia idea that we can provide you if you only give us the votes and the power to put your beliefs in, not beneficial for them. How do we show them that reality contradicts?
I'm so sorry. Do you mind repeating the question, because the audio cut out a little bit? I
Oh,
apologize.
sure, no problem. So when there's a certain reality that the right, the Republicans specifically, mostly right now, seem to be the issue, paint for the religious people and say, we can give you this shiny bauble like you were talking about. How do we show them that that shiny bauble isn't actually beneficial?
You know, it's really interesting. The right is always casting themselves as the party of family values, but the economic policies that their favored politicians endorse are actually intensifying economic inequality and making it so much harder for so many American families to succeed. I think, you know, they sort of attract the rank and file with the sort of shiny baubles of the culture wars, right? But at the end of the day, none of this would be happening without sort of big ticket donors on of the religious right. And in my book, The Power Worshippers, I write about a lot of those donors. I'm thinking about like the Wilkes brothers, who are fracking billionaires, or the Betsy DeVos, Prince families, Filer. I mean, there are just so many different far right big ticket donors that are these sort of plutocratic, you know, billionaires that are as committed, if not more committed, to sort of far right libertarian economics as they are to the so-called culture wars. And this is sort of how they get people to vote for them. And they're endorsing economic policies that are sort of intensifying economic inequality, you know, which is frankly at record levels. We've entered a new Gilded Age, and making, you know, degrading our public schools, degrading healthcare systems, making it harder for American families to succeed. So I think, in my view, pointing that out it can possibly be helpful, because that's a side of the picture that they like to have, they would prefer to have us ignore.
So we do have a couple more questions. We're going to do 3 more. Out of the ones that have been submitted, I'm going to, there's one that says, are you surprised for how media and others seem shocked about themes of Christian nationalism and QAnon that were on display on Wednesday?
I think it's really hard to talk about the political actions of religious groups without appearing to bash religion itself. And nothing could be further from the truth. But because of that, I think what's happened is that what should have been covered often as political stories, you know, are covered as religious stories, which has led to a kind of underreporting about the religious right. So when you see a group of, you know, it's just, I think a lot of the media has shied away from these types of stories, critiquing the political actions of different religious groups. They don't want to be seen as intolerant. And,
of course.
Yeah, led to a certain underreporting.
Okay. What if any, are there any groups that you would want to talk about that you feel are doing a good job to present kind of like a non-religious moral alternative to the religious right?
There are a lot of groups. I mean, I think just about every group that's involved in things like voting rights, or in many of the groups involved in church-state separation, or many of the groups involved in restoring the rights of people in our country who are vulnerable, the rights of any sort of human rights organizations. I think it's not that we need better stories. The better stories are everywhere. The better narratives are everywhere. But we don't necessarily have, you know, the same access to sort of far like propaganda networks in a way that
Right,
who
for sure.
right does.
But for those of us who may not have like the names of these groups, are there any specifically that you would like to mention?
I try to shy away from mentioning specific groups.
Okay, that's fair.
But if, it's looking at voting rights, human rights, civil rights organizations, there's certainly a lot of groups on the religious left that are interested in these types of things. There are a lot of sort of groups that promote separation of church and state that do this too.
Okay, and there is another question that I do think is very important. Do you think that religious organizations, if they're going to enter into the political sphere, should be taxed?
I think that we can all talk about our religion, and we can even talk about it. Many politicians can do it. This isn't quite the same as the question. I've got two parts to this answer. The first is, sorry,
I think we had a little stutter there. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't have a problem with tax exemptions for religious groups, but I think they need to respect the guidelines, which is perhaps not just the letter, but also the spirit.
Right, for sure. Okay, well, that's a good number of questions. I think that we had talked about the possibility of you sticking around afterwards for Zoom call if people wanted to chat. Are you still open for that?
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Miss Katherine, and we will see you after the assembly. So we're going to move forward now to our Trying My Best section. And this honestly is one of my favorite sections of our Sunday Assembly group because it gives somebody in our community the opportunity to talk to us about how they've lived their life and how they've tried their best to show the values that we all support. And so today, talking about religion and politics, who other than Gayle Jordan are we going to get to talk to us, because she was a former candidate for Tennessee State Senate in both 2016 and 2018. She's also the executive director, of Recovering from Religion. So Gayle, could you tell us how you're trying my best?
Sure. Thank you for that introduction, Jen. And Katherine, what a wonderful presentation. Gives us so much to think about and to process. I have missed all of you. As most of you know, I have relocated across the country and I'm out here in the Pacific Northwest. And as soon as we can all travel again, everybody comes to Oregon for a Sunday assembly. I am not going to do my full speech about running for office. You all have heard it before. It's on the internet if you're interested. I just want to talk a little bit about one of the 5 takeaways. If you'd like to Google, you can find the whole talk about it. In a nutshell, I ran for state senate, as Jen said, and the opposing party came after my religious freedom because I am an out and loud and proud and very visible, very vocal atheist. And so it's a great story. It's a great story, and there's all kinds of graphics because the Tennessee Republican Party did multiple flyers with distorted pictures of my face, and of course they completely attacked my belief system. So instead of telling that whole story, as I would conclude that talk, I talked about the takeaways, and I want to talk about one of those takeaways. We humanists, we non-believers, particularly those of us who were formerly religious, I complain often about being mischaracterized, about being disrespected. Where does she get her morality? All of the things that we hear about why, we're baby eating, goat worshiping pagans and heathens. And one of the things we complain about is that people don't understand what it means to be a humanist, or what it means to have processed our religious belief and discarded them and lost confidence in them. When you run for office as a non-believer, particularly in the South, particularly in Tennessee, almost more than anywhere else as we see, this question comes up in every interview. It comes up in every podcast. It comes up in every public presentation that you make. And you have an uninterrupted spotlight to be able to tell the story, to be able to tell why you believe what you believe. There is nothing like forming your narrative, being able to get it down into into a statement, into a nutshell, to be able to tell over and over and over again why you're motivated. Mine was that I am moved by the well-being of my neighbor, that their suffering moves me, that their well-being moves me. And I was able to tell this over and over and over again. Did it have the impact I wanted it to? Well, we certainly didn't win the seat, but there were so many more opportunities for us to be able to say why we believe in what we believe. So you know where I'm going with this. Running for office is not for everybody. I get that. Being politically active is. Whether you're the candidate, or you're the campaign manager, or you're the treasurer, or you're a volunteer, we have an obligation to support our country. We have a political obligation in our communities to make things better for the people in our communities. So let me encourage you to consider it. Whether you're the candidate, I'll tell you in my case, one of my dearest friends and I decided together to do it. She served as my campaign manager. I was the candidate. There was never really any question about how we were going to do that, but we had a riotous time. We had a joyful time. It made the tedious moments of having to sit through the Farmers Bureau luncheon, where you are the only person in the room of your party, and hearing all of the disparaging remarks about your party. It was hard, it was tedious, and yet you had a companion to do it with. So I would encourage you to consider something like that. But in any case, I'll conclude. Remember how when we were in church, we loved it when the pastor said, and in conclusion, so I'll conclude with this. Visibility is everything. And when you have an opportunity to state who you are and what you believe in, as Katherine explained to us, we have to do this politically, but we also have to do it on a personal level. We have to talk to the people in our family. We have to talk to the people in our community. And honestly, did this have the effect we wanted it to have? Well, as I mentioned, we didn't win the seat, but now 3 and 5 years away from those 2 campaigns that I ran in Tennessee, I still get contacted. I get contacted by the people that I met, asking questions. You said this, and I remember you saying this, and what could I do if I wanted to run for some kind of city council? So yes, it did have the effect. There is so much more to this than winning the seat. So in conclusion, consider what is your obligation in the political sphere. What can you do to make your community better, to improve the lives of the people that you care about in your community? Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I can't wait till we have our Sunday Assembly PNW version. Thanks all.
Thank you, Gayle. I am the face of America, first to make that claim. My people showed a reverence to the rivers and the plains. I love this land as no one can. My legacy remains, but the treatment of my nation has left a mark of shame. I am the face of America, don't forget my name. I am the face of America, though the choice was not my own. Across the generations, I have come to call it home. And when I sing, let freedom ring, I feel it in my bones. I am the overcomer, but my work is not yet done. I am the face of America, and I will press on. This is a beautiful land of many colors. This is a musical land of many tongues, for every man and every woman, those with religion and those with none. I am the face of America. My heart is pure and my hands are strong. I came here for a better life, built this place where I belong. I earned my way even when the pay was short and the days were long. If all you see is an immigrant, you're seeing me all wrong. I am the face of America. Yes, I am the face of America. I am the face of America. This is my song. This is my song. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the redwood forests to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me the endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
Uh-oh, she's muted.
Muted. And now she's frozen up.
Uh-oh.
Hey, everybody.
How about one more chorus? This land is
I am so sorry.
everybody now.
I so apologize. Yeah. There was a hiccup in my internet at the worst possible time. Technology, eh? But there's so much to think about in everything that we've been shown. And I know for me, the biggest things are thinking about what is it that I want to do? What is it that I can focus on? And I think that that's a really good question to consider as we go into our minute of mindfulness. So I want you to think about the things that you believe, the things that you want to stand for as we take this moment to just reflect. Welcome back. So we have another poll for you. Hope you had a good little moment to think and reflect. So our second question is, sorry, I need to find it. Which of these is designed to restrict pastors or churches from official endorsement of a political candidate? The First Amendment, the Reagan Doctrine, the Johnson Amendment, or the Establishment Clause? So please go ahead and vote. Use the Menti code 9929830 to vote what you think the answer is, and I'll reveal it here after we have our announcements. So, first thing is we need to talk about the all-important thing of money, because as our good friend Lori likes to say, wherever two or more are gathered, there are expenses. So even though we are no longer meeting in person, there's a lot of expenses that we still have to take care of, as far as like it costs money to maintain the Zoom account, and we try to do things as far as helping out around the community. So we donate to different charities each month. So please become a sustaining member. Use PayPal to set it and forget it, or there's ways that you can do little additional things like purchase things through Amazon Smile. And so all of that is listed on our website, SundayAssemblyNashville.com, I think. And if it's not, then let us know how what's missing so we can get you that information. The next slide is going to talk about how you can get involved. Here is a list of people that you can contact. And if you're not in the Sunday Assembly group yet, come join us. We're on Facebook. You can search us by looking for Sunday Assembly Nashville. And there's also a secret Sunday Assembly Nashville group for those who may not be quite so out, or if there's something that we want to keep more private within the group rather than it being something public. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. You can see we try to keep things very uniform across the board. Just if you look for Sunday Assembly or Sunday Assembly Nashville, you will find it. There's another announcement that I wanted to talk about. Lori posted in our Secret Sunday Assembly group that there's a class that's going to be off. I can't remember the exact information about that class, but that's on the Secret Assembly Sunday Assembly page. It's going to be a class that meets at least a few times a week between now and the end of March, if I remember correctly. And it's a really good opportunity for those of us who recognize that racism is an issue and that we want to work to make sure that racism becomes a thing of the past and not something that we have to hand down to future generations to deal with. And then also want to talk about our next assembly, because we want you to join us again. Our next assembly is actually on Valentine's Day, and it's going to be, our speaker is going to be Janice Selby, and her topic is going to be sex, the forbidden fruit that makes the sweetest jam. This Nashville Pledge Against Racism is what it is. And Monday, it's 6 Mondays in February and March. Thank you, Lori, for letting me know that. So that is our announcements for today, in case you missed it. Hi, I'm Jen Brown. And before I do my closing thoughts, I'm going to go back to our poll and see what our votes have been. So what's the results of our poll, please? There they are. And I'm glad to see that once again, the majority of people already have this information. Yay, you paid attention in civics class. The correct answer is the Johnson Amendment. And wow, it's so good that we have rules and regulations that are designed to try and prevent this uprising of religious nationalism and this idea that religion has to be included in the political landscape. I think that the dangerous thing, as Miss Katherine spoke about, is this concept of persecution. We want to be careful that we don't go from this applies to everyone across the beliefs. We don't want to go from that to we're against you because you're religious. And that distinction is really difficult for our Christian brothers and sisters because we are all still family regardless of our beliefs. I know that when COVID became such a big thing and there was the request for churches to not allow in-person meetings, I actually had a long Facebook conversation with a Christian friend where he was convinced, there was nothing I could say that would convince him otherwise, that it was an attack on the Christian values and it was an attack on the church, and it was designed to somehow prevent Christians from living their life the way they would want to. And I tried to help him understand that it wasn't about trying to prevent their beliefs or their gathering, but it was about trying to save people's lives, trying to make sure that people weren't unnecessarily exposed to this disease that had a very real chance of them falling ill and it impacting their lives permanently, if not causing death. And it's like there's these blinders that are on when you're in a certain mindset that means that you can't see outside the boundaries of that mindset. And so our challenge is to try and work within the boundaries of their mindset to try and push them out a little bit and expand them so that they understand that we want to find commonality and work together with them to make our country the best version of itself that it can be. So we have one last song and we're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jen. Sing along with us on this one. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe in good. Oh, I believe in good. I believe in being good and doing good, just for goodness sake. Good makes the whole world better. Good is great, and I believe in harmony. Respect for all humanity. I believe that we will find the only truth we need. Living this one life by this one creed. I believe in good. I believe in good. One more time around. I believe in good. In good. Oh, I believe in good. Pass the plate around now. I believe in being good and doing good, just for goodness sake. Good makes the whole world better. Good is great, and I believe in harmony. Respect for all humanity. I believe that we will find the only truth we need. Living